My PhD is in literacy, but people don't like to read a wall of text. And so introducing a module with a video is great because it gives them the big picture.
Welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Peggy Semingson. Hi, Peggy.
Hi.
Well, this is some great news for those of you who are new to the podcast. Dr. Semingson emailed us at facultyfactorykim@gmail.com or the facultyfactory.org website and said, I love your podcast. I'm really curious if your audience would appreciate what I do. And oh my gosh, wait till you see. Dr. Semingson is at the University of Texas at Arlington, and I'll have her tell you more details, but she has won numerous awards. Just listen to a couple of them. Distinguished Teaching Professor, the President's Award for Transformative Online Education, the System Regents Outstanding Teacher, the ILA Jerry Johns Outstanding Teacher, USDLA Best Practice Award for Excellence. She's got a YouTube channel. She published an awesome article in the Journal of Faculty Development, which I love, entitled Bridging Distance, Fostering Digital Community and Student Voice in Real-Time Synchronous Learning. So what a perfect synchronicity of this past 2 years of nonsense and having Dr. Semingson's expertise on the podcast. So Peggy, why don't you start by telling everybody exactly what you do at UT?
Sure. Okay, awesome. So I've been teaching online since 2008 when I started my academic career, full-time professor on the tenure track. I'm now tenured, which is, it's good. And I teach in the TESOL program. So that's teaching people to teach English as a second or other language, which is really needed. It's a global profession. And so it's perfect for me because I embed training for the students on how to teach through Zoom and how to teach online, because so often their jobs and the workforce is moving towards online teaching spaces.
And again, for 14 years, you've been doing this. So Isn't that like serendipity that here you are and a whole community of people who have been trying to and been building the science and the art and the expertise around doing this. And then lo and behold, how valuable you are and the increased attention to and necessity of us teaching online. So I'm really looking forward to what wisdom you're going to impart with us, how to engage our learners, because I've had many conversations on the podcast recently where I have a lot of anxiety as a high E extrovert, used to being with three-dimensional human beings and really feeling this sense of disconnect. So I can't wait for you to share all these nuggets that you've built up over your career. So take it away, Peggy.
Yeah, well, awesome. I was going to add to that. Prior to my current role in TESOL, I was an elementary school teacher, believe it or not, and so it was really an interesting transition. But yeah, so I think it's a really timely topic. I think it's been timely, because people like the flexibility of online learning, and I think that's what the pandemic brought out. It just accelerated it. It made us realize, I can do this from home. But yeah, the challenge is still there of engaging online learners. And so my main tip is just by design, build in outreach to students. And so, and I say students, but I mean learners, because like I teach all ages, just a mix of people. And I know that people in the audience of your podcast teach mainly, or if not primarily, adult learners in professional areas. But yeah, just need to engage these really busy learners, people that I think the main change that we've had is we've gone from just pre-recording an hour-long lecture or worse, longer, and then making learning more bite-sized. So I've gotten into micro-learning, which is just short bits of information, short-form learning. So like this podcast is like more long-form learning, but the topic is so engaging that people want to listen, that kind of thing. But short form learning just helps busy people. And so that's really what I've gotten into. And if we're not doing short form learning, then it has to be engaging. And people mistake that for entertaining. It doesn't have to always be entertaining, but it needs to be engaging. So I think you hit on the key thing about engaging learners.
So can you tell us about, what do you mean build in outreach? What does you mean by that?
So most online courses are sort of prepackaged. You've got your modules, you might have some synchronous sessions, but a lot of people really don't know how to structure those live online sessions. And so that can be a challenge. But outreach is just sending scheduled emails to students. So maybe every Monday morning, you send an email saying, hey, everyone, here's what we're doing this week, or, whatever your pace is for the course. But also sending those nudge emails. And so a couple of years ago, you really started hearing about nudge emails. So like intervening if someone's not participating in the course, or someone just gets derailed. And that happened all the time during the pandemic. I got derailed when I got COVID.
Right.
And, I think a lot of us got impacted, someone in our household, quarantining in our bedrooms. So just saying, hey, I noticed you haven't checked in, not being nosy, but just, can I help you? Kind of nudge emails. And so that's been especially important in the pandemic.
I like that. I like so you're making me think about two hats that I try to, use in the podcast. Is one, to leaders who are deans and program developers and staff who are running leadership programs and content. And then also as a learner myself, as a faculty member, how can I use this information? So I like the scheduled emails, which we do. So we'll say, hey, Peggy, you signed up for the class next Thursday. Don't forget, you have to do the online blah, 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 Myers-Briggs assessment to get your full report to be able to participate in the class. And then Monday, hey, don't forget, Peggy, you still didn't do that assessment. And you're really not going to get anything out of the session if you don't do it. And I guess I never really thought concretely or purposefully about this, a nudge email. Geez, you signed up for the class or this course and you didn't show up, or you signed up and you've missed the past two. Like you said, are you okay? Is everything good? No pressure here. But if you do need, I like that kind of, I'm not forgotten. I've not fallen off the radar. And I do, people miss me when I don't show up. It's like an accountability group. If you kind of sign on to do something and your friends are like, gosh, Peggy, where you been?
Right.
It's nice to know that you are missed and that you matter and that you do contribute something. And that's probably the important thing, is I imagine you feel like I'm not getting anything from it, or I'm not giving anything to it, so I have no value. So that kind of building in value makes people realize that they're counting on me to bring something.
Right. Yeah. I love nudge. And I didn't know, but I used to write these mean emails like, you missed this assignment, 0. And, and then I learned about like crafting nudge emails as an art, and you're supposed to be supportive. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it was pretty, because I was writing these not nasty, but, compared to what I do now. And so I was taught by, we use a software, an analytics software, and we get a heat map of who's participating. And that's how we learn to craft. And that's where I learned to craft these nudge emails. And you need to reframe how you write it. And so that's an art and a science. And people can kind of Google writing nudge emails. It actually originated at a more like customer servicey kind of area, which is interesting. I think it's really new.
Well, wait a second. You said heat map. I get a heat map. That is, I don't know. Hold the phone here. What the heck is a heat map?
So we use a software. It's from Inspire. It's called Inspire for Faculty, and the company is called Civitas, Civitas. And so we get a heat map so we can see, red is like really low, green is high. And so we can see at a glance who's participating. It has some other data, but it's really helpful towards getting insights into, because we can just look and see, we can look and see more manually, if you will, who's participating, or if it's a small course, we can just, we know who's not doing things. But
This, Peggy, this is super cool. Now I'm getting super excited. When you say participating, so yeah, do you mean attended the session?
No, like
it's deeper. Like not only did Kim sign in and she was at the Zoom, but she was participating. I'm doing finger quotes like people hear me.
Clicks.
I'm clicking finger quotes here that they actually was engaged in doing something in the chat, and I was in my breakout room and there was motion or activity. Is that what you're talking about?
More in the asynchronous. So not necessarily in the live session, but more big picture in the learning. Most people use learning management systems. And so I would just tell everyone, look in your learning management system itself and see what you can do to sort of see, like it'll say when they've logged in last or activity time. And so those are good metrics, like for kind of for all of us, that are teaching online or digitally, just to see learner engagement behind the scenes.
Oh gosh, and I'm sorry, Peggy, but I have to just put this out there for my peers who do faculty development. I'm thinking not only is it like website diagnostics to see how many people went to your podcast or your YouTube or your website,
analytics,
and those kind of analytics, but also when we think demonstrating value of our offices of faculty development, our offices of faculty affairs, we talk about here at Hopkins, kind of what you were talking about earlier, Peggy, that you just kind of run the statistics, who went to the past course, non-duplicative people, how many faculty do you have? So what proportion of your at Hopkins, 2,100 faculty took a course? But I like kind of that to me is an old-fashioned and obviously valuable exercise of just keeping lists and tracking who's doing stuff. And if we could superimpose that exercise with a heat map of just kind of seeing, that would be one quick glance, I imagine.
Totally.
Like what proportion of our faculty are even opening the email?
Yes.
Yeah, that's super cool, Peggy.
Yeah, so I've gotten into analytics in that regard. But yeah, just the communication piece of that is so crucial. And so, yeah, just doing nudge emails, doing virtual outreach. I wrote a book chapter and I call myself a virtual mother hen because I'm, it's kind of like, are you all here? And just caring about your online students. During the pandemic, I think there was this approach like, well, we're just going to kind of muddle through and get through the pandemic, and then we'll go back to brick and mortar business as usual. But, these are ways you can really include your students, let them know you're there on the other end, let them know that you care and that kind of thing. So virtual outreach has been huge for me.
Love it. So can you go back to the micro learning also, the short learning? I want to hear more.
Yeah. So I learned about this in a random offhand remark when I was standing in a buffet. But micro learning has been around for a little while, and it's really been picked up in the corporate sector. I think because people are just so busy, but then we're all busy now. And so it's just this idea of kind of taking your competencies or your sort of smallest objectives in your course, and then creating content or finding content that goes with those competencies. But it's hard to find micro learning. It's a lot of learning is long, but so an example is like a 2-minute podcast and a 2-question quiz.
What?
Yeah. So, so just build it into your contents, but you might have a series of those micro podcasts. So I used to teach teachers, and let's say I'm teaching, how to learn to read. And so I might have a micro podcast on phonics and then one on vocabulary, just giving them the basics of it before we jump in. So it's just little bite-sized bits of content. Usually we think of audio and video, but it could also just be anything, a short segment of text that you send through email. I mean, it just varies.
Or Instagram. Now you're reminding me of
exactly.
Yeah, we talked about snippets on year 2 of the podcast. We called it the year of the snippet, and
I love it.
Kind of the same thing that one of our colleagues came up with years ago at one of our professional conferences for the group on faculty affairs, and she talked about snippets being like 10-minute blocks. But I like this 2 minutes is. I think, Peggy, you've nailed it. That'd be perfect if faculty could go through a library of content and just, highlight or asterisk or star this. I want to learn about, say, negotiation or communicating or mediating conflict. And they could just kind of bang, 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 listen to a couple of quick 2-minute things to refresh their memory about what should I do as I enter this meeting where there's a conflict between a postdoc and a faculty member. What are some of the basic principles that I should adhere to or not do? I think that's awesome. Love it.
Yeah. I've loved it too. And it's easy to create. You can just do it on your phone.
On your phone? What do you mean?
Yeah. So I pull up the voice memo app. I have an iPhone. And so I just pull it up and make a podcast and send it to myself. And then I put it on SoundCloud or whatever platform you use. So it can just be almost spontaneous, or just go in your closet and you load, minimalist technology.
So like into your closet. Okay, faculty members, are we hearing this? Just step into a closet, step into the restroom, step into your car on the way home.
Yeah, why not?
One of my colleagues, Dave Usum, talks about he would dictate his writing for like scholarly papers on the way home. He'd just say, he'd start talking, the literature shows that whereas we know this, we don't know that. And in this paper, he would just start dictating that. And then when he would go home, he'd have the basics, the shell of a paper. So what you're saying, Peggy, is that's brilliant. The same thing if you're going home and something off the top of your head that you just learned or taught today, you can do those soundbite 2-minute chunks or just talk, pause. And then by the time you get home, you got a 20-minute series that you could chop up into little nuggets. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, and I'll just add one thing while I thought about it. Something else I like to do with microlearning is the course trailer. So you may have heard of that. So the course trailer. Oh yeah. So like we have movie trailers that get us excited about movies. And so the course trailer is just an overview and a hook to get learners interested in your course coming up next week or month or even next semester.
The course trailer, that is genius. So it's also an audio. Is that what you're saying to me? So I'm trying to see how this, in my mind, what we do is we love to bury our faculty members in emails. We just love it. We love to send them hundreds a day to drive them to utter distraction. But we try to be fancy, like in our advertising for courses or workshops or any kind of sessions. We'll say, do you have trouble writing? Do you find that you have no time in a day? Do you have, a trouble finishing a paper or starting a paper? If so, this is for you. So we try to we think that's catchy. I don't know if that's old school and you're laughing, but we try to do that we need catchy blurbs in an email. But are you telling me, Peggy Semingson, that if I recorded a course trailer and then how do you put it out in a podcast, or would we embed it as an audio in an email? How would that work?
Yeah, so it's usually a video, but it could be a voiceover with a really interesting visual slide. But just getting them just exactly what you said. Like, do you want to learn how to X, Y, and Z? Stay tuned. I use those catchy hooks too. So yeah, just hooking the future learners in, or sometimes you need to promote your class because the enrollment, is sort of mediocre or whatever. And so we're kind of competing for their attention, for their enrollment. And I actually blast mine out on, you mentioned social media. So I know other people want to know what I'm doing. And so I without oversharing, I share my course trailer, but also on a meta level, like here is what a course trailer is. And so it just talks about myself briefly, the course content that's going to be covered, your learning objectives in a nutshell, but the 1-minute version.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then any deliverables, like at the end of this course, you'll know how to blah, blah.
Yeah. So you put that I imagine someone could put that obviously on Instagram. Oh my gosh, their LinkedIn, their Facebook, their YouTube, the podcast, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So it's easy. But then I like to share. Not all people do, but you can, there's ways to lock it down.
Yeah, we hired a really wonderful communication specialist 2 years ago now. And she and our other program coordinator really good at coming up with infographics. So we thought, well, geez, the boring old titles are blah, they're not working. So let's come up with snazzy titles. So first we started playing with the really cool, catchy titles. Then we tried to jazz up the language to make it punchy and short and brief and enticing. Then we started adding, like, how can we put a graphic to really pull people? So we've done everything that we can think of, except we've not done these course trailers that like an audio kind of coming to a theater near you kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So get me thinking about that's super cool.
Anyone can Google like how to make a course trailer, and there's tutorials, but I was just going to say, I love infographics too. And I think the best infographics of the pandemic are from the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. They are so like, I love them. They have little 4-panel cartoons. I have learned a lot about COVID through those infographics.
Oh my gosh. You just taught me something, Peggy. I didn't even know that the School of Public Health had infographics.
Oh, they're so great. They're informative, but they're like they can appeal to literally all ages, and and they're persuasive without like hitting you on the head, causing a fight,
I like it. Persuasive without starting a fight. I love it. Oh my gosh, so cool. So, when I was reading your article, I wanted to make sure I asked you about this concept that you brought up, that in the chat you like to encourage, or you have this philosophy of non-hierarchical knowledge.
Oh, yes.
Can you share that with us? Because I really liked that it seemed like a humble and some humility in teaching and recognizing that, especially with adult learners, there's so much wisdom in the crowd. And it does take a lot off of the instructor to recognize that you don't have to be the keeper of all truth here. There's learning going. So tell us about this again, knowledge.
So I stumbled across, I think it came from knowledge management. The field of knowledge management in general talks about how we leverage knowledge. And the idea of non-hierarchical knowledge sharing has always appealed to me because I'm from Alaska. And we always had to share information that could literally save your life. Like there's a bear down the road. Oh. It doesn't matter who shared that information. It might save your life. And we literally used to share that kind of information. There's a bear down the road, or there's a moose, or here's what to do if you see a bear. And so, that kind of or what to do if you don't have your mittens and you're in a snowstorm. I grew up like that we all helped each other out, which sounds corny, but it was deep seated in me. If someone was by the side of the road and they were broke down, you go help them. And then I moved to Southern California, and it wasn't like that at all. It was like, everybody, kind of survival of the fittest, more so. That's not to say it was all like that, but just generally Alaska was a little more supportive and nurturing in that way. We helped each other knowledge-wise. And so that stuck with me and resonated with me. So this whole idea of like, and it's not new, but this whole idea of that your learners bring a lot to the equation is helpful, but we tend to think of them as blank slates. And so moving towards leveraging learner to learner ideas really, really is useful. Especially with professional programs. Like I was in teacher education and now TESOL. And so learners have been out there experiencing things as practitioners, and they can share that knowledge, especially when there's a range of knowledge. So like in medical areas, there's highly specialized areas. What can we share?
So how do you facilitate that, Peggy? I'm trying to envision, okay, so say I'm going to give a course on how to publish a paper. And it's a workshop. It's an hour and a half, and I have assistant professors, associate professors, they're clinician investigators, they're basic scientists, they're running the gamut, and I have breakout sessions planned, and I'm trying to be using my adult active learning, principles. How do I engage around this knowledge management concept without distracting? My big thing is I've heard people talk about, well, please don't use the chat, or we're disabling the chat because we want you to focus on what the instructor is saying, and then we will have time for chat later on. And then the other end of the spectrum, I see we've all been on calls or sessions where the chat's just blowing up, and sometimes it's associated with what is being delivered via content. Sometimes it's peripheral, sometimes it goes way left, or sometimes there's a lag. And Peggy asked us to tell everybody what you did last summer. And, 10 minutes later, someone's still putting it, I was in Bermuda. And you're like, wait a minute, what does that have to do with what's going on now? And then can you talk me through how you do that functionally to make sure that it works and it's not distracting you, the instructor, or other students. And, I can't wrap my head quite around how you.
Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, and I've heard the gamut too, like what? That's so distracting. And then I've been in ones where they're crickets. And so it just depends. I think it's the tone, if it's a workshop versus an ongoing course. But in my ongoing courses, I try to leverage the chat. I think keeping the sessions to a good size helps too. So when you have 600 people, doesn't work, but at the same time, I've been on kind of mid-sized ones where they've turned off the chat. And I can understand, like with Zoom bombing and weird stuff, I can understand why it's shut down. But one thing people can do for sort of assuming there's no strange people on the session is having a Google Doc and then linking to that Google Doc. To me, that's the best solution for that. And also people that have delayed thoughts or are watching the recording can post.
So the Google Doc, you're saying then if you have that in the chat, that people can click on that, and now in live real time, where you've maybe pre-filled in questions or topics, people can then reflect and go back, oh, that's right, I also forget about, I know we're 40 minutes into the thing, but earlier I couldn't think of what I wanted to say, but now I can go back up and put it there in the proper place. And then Google Doc can be shared, and now it's a little bit makes more sense. It's kind of organized. Okay,
it's organized, yeah, and it's pre-planned. It lets people know like you planned it, and it's curated too. And so people can also put their own resources. So like they may know, so they may have experience or knowledge, but then sometimes it's just a resource, like a link to look into and that kind of thing. Or people can just, it can just be affirming to people. Oh, I use that all the time too. So so experience type of knowledge sharing, and then like link type knowledge sharing is good.
Yeah, I the first time I experienced that, and you're right now, you're helping me to reflect on, we have a monthly learning community on coaching that Ann Brown, a colleague from Duke, puts together, and there can be 50, 60 people, but there's always this, it was my first entree into what this Google Doc is. And I went to it and I started typing my name, and they said, put your name in the Google Doc. And I'm thinking, oh, here we go. My computer's going to explode because I'm terrible with technology. Then as I was typing my name, I could see other people typing, and I'm like, what is happening here? But it was an interesting and a good way to keep track of stuff versus when people put stuff in a chat, then I got to scroll up in the chat and copy this and paste that and go there. And then for someone like me, I don't like all that information flying at me at one time. And then it's hard for me to work because I'm a very organized person, and that makes me feel unsettled. So I like that Google Doc exercise. Great one. Your article was about synchronous learning, and then you mentioned, people who will watch it later. What are your thoughts, or what are some tips you have about asynchronous engagement? And do you still do how do you engage with the people who are doing things in the middle of the night or around the world or on do you do the nudge emails, and how do you build community when it's?
Oh yeah. So great. Yeah. So I've mainly been doing videos. So like people can watch you and see you. And just anecdotally, my learners from the time I started teaching online have enjoyed the videos. And in fact, sometimes I meet my students in person at like a conference, and they're like, I know you from your videos. Or I even had someone say, honey, this is my teacher from the videos. So apparently the whole household watched the videos, or inadvertently,
So what do you do in the videos? What do you mean? Is it like your course trailer videos, or is it your YouTube channel?
Oh, yeah.
What does the video mean?
Content videos. And so I use videos strategically. And again, this isn't anything new per se, but they're underutilized. So instead of, my PhD is in literacy, but people don't like to read a wall of text. And so introducing a module with a video is great because it gives them the big picture. And then I'd say the next best type of video is pick your trickiest concepts. And so whatever your field is, you've got these concepts that are really hard to learn, or, they're just conceptually dense. And so pick those videos pick those topics to make your videos for, because they'll watch them 5 times.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So I pick my hard concepts for videos.
I got it. Wow. That's really making me think too, that when we Gosh, Peggy, that's a really great idea, because now you're helping me to think about a leadership course we just did recently. And my colleague and I were doing it together, and we were really chewing on the fact that, well, this exercise is going to take a lot longer, and we didn't want to arbitrarily stop the breakout rooms. And then when we got in the session, a couple groups came back early to the main room because they were done, but a couple others were really struggling with it.
Right.
And then we felt like she's texting me and chatting me. She's like, we're not going to get through it. We're not going to get through it. What do we do? Should we skip breakout number 3? And she was freaking out. And I was like, I don't know. But now you're making me think that, wow, when we design our content, think about the areas that we know are going to be either really deep or tough or require, some, as you suggested, some people think more slowly, or the more introverted say really want to chew about something, versus the extroverts like me who are just going to start blah, 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 that might be an opportunity to, like a pre-assignment, you might look
exactly.
at earlier. And afterwards, we know we didn't get a chance to really fully debrief this. After the session, we're going to send you a link to a video. We'd encourage you to watch this and think about it more and share your thoughts. So in a Google Doc, I mean, wow, you're really getting me excited, Peggy.
And the one, this is sort of unscientific, but I've had my YouTube channel for 10 years, and I have this huge outlier video that has like 500,000 views. And it's kind of the driver of my YouTube channel, and it's on the hardest topic in the field of learning.
Awareness.
Yes. And it's like this, I was just standing up in front of the room, and I randomly put a little flip camera, remember those, on the desk, and recorded myself. And it ended up being like my biggest hit because nobody understands it. It's true. And like, I don't know that I did an earth-shattering explanation, but it's short, it's 10 minutes, and it covers the 3 big topics: phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, and phonics. And those are the biggies for learning to read. And most people just think of, everybody knows phonics, but like, what are the other 2? They're the underlying building blocks. But anyway, it's a hard topic. It's really hard. And it's the most visited for a reason. It's the hardest topic. So that's kind of been my aha of having that YouTube channel, is people drift toward and search for the hardest topics.
People drift for and search for the hardest topics. You are so right, Peggy. That is, I love ideas that are so awesome and so simple, though. It's so like, why haven't we thought about this? And I'm sure people are screaming right now, of course we thought about it, Kim. We do it all the time. But I was recently doing some reanalyses of data for a revise and resubmit paper again. And I was like, well, multinomial regression, like, what are the assumptions? And I'm trying to harken back to, my stats courses, 75 years ago. And I'm like, everything's on YouTube. I want to YouTube this. And sure enough, like this most complex statistical structural equation modeling, there are like 50 videos. I'm like, where was this when we were in graduate school?
Right.
And you are so right, Peggy. That is a great idea. Think all of us as faculty members, as faculty development leaders, faculty affairs, those of us who do promotion, appointment, the questions that we get asked all the time, and the things that faculty members have the toughest time wrapping our heads around because we're not necessarily taught how to do it. My gosh, let's just create these short, micro learning, short form learning, YouTube videos on those dense topics. But oh my gosh, what a great way to impact and reach and disseminate your science.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh, Peggy, love it. Wow, this has been great. I want to redirect you to, email Peggy, Dr. Peggy Semingson at University of Texas, Arlington, but you can email her at peggys@uta.edu, peggys@uta.edu. Check out her YouTube channel. It's amazing. It's Peggy Semingson. You can Google her article that was in Journal of Faculty Development, which is super good about bridging distance and fostering community. And check her out at Texas. This is so great. I have so many great ideas, and I really appreciate you, and especially love the sense of community and communication of there's a bear down the road, there's a moose down the road. The faculty members like, what are our bears down the road and a moose down the road? There's COVID down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a supply chain down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's help each other. Let's kind of adopt a little bit of Alaska community here. And so thank you for bringing that lovely sentiment and caring about each other. And that's what we're doing here on the Faculty Factory community. So thank you for being a part of it, Dr. Semingson. We really
it's fun. Yeah, I love this podcast.
Thanks a lot, Peggy. And see you guys next time on the Faculty Factory podcast.
Hello, Faculty Factory listeners. It's your friendly podcast producer here, Casey Callanan. Just to remind you, if you didn't already know it, the Faculty Factory is now offering coaching. You can learn more by visiting facultyfactory.org/coaching. Faculty Factory Coaching is about building a thriving clinical, educational, and research career to be successful beyond all your expectations. Most of all, it's about living a joy-filled life. To learn more about Faculty Factory Coaching, drop us a line over at facultyfactory.org/coaching, and you can learn more there.
Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. The mission of the Faculty Factory is to build and support a community of leaders in faculty development who share tools, resources, wisdom, and encouragement in service to our faculty members, schools, and institutions. We encourage you to go to facultyfactory.org to find out more. Get in touch with me, ask me any questions. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. We'll see you next time. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine Office of Faculty. For more information, visit facultyfactory.org.